Ederson is here we go to Manchester United. MATEUS Fernandes, is he going to be next? Sandro Tonali, is he going to be next? Alex Scott, is he going to be next? There's a few players to talk about. And I think there's also some breaking news that maybe there's going to be an offer from Roma for Greenwood as well. So there could be money coming in there. That's going to be one deal as well, where one of the good things about that deal is Manchester United have a massive sell-on clause of about 50 to 60%. And also Marseille are going to try and push the price as high as possible because Manchester United are going to get a lot of that money back. So that could be a good deal, good bit of bonus money coming in at some point, hopefully this transfer window. I'm hoping that he actually goes for a lot more than Roma are initially going to offer, and maybe other clubs come in. I'm really hoping for a bidding war for Greenwood. So that's all I'll say on that matter. But that might be a developing story which we'll focus on as and when things happen. But to start with, I did a stream last night. We started very late. We got the breakthrough news from Romano very late, Ornstein very late. So we did a late night stream. We finished about probably I know like 12:30 in the night in the UK here. So very late. We're on it early again. So this is a few things that come out about Ederson from Italian sources as well. A lot of positivity actually in the media. So a lot of people on social media as well. There seems to be genuinely quite a lot of positivity. We did a poll last night about whether you think this is a good signing, and 85% of people said they thought it was a good signing. It's the first one. It's the first one over the line. The question now is going to be, what is Manchester United's next deal? What is our next move? And are we going to get three midfielders in total? I think we are going to get three midfielders, and I think this is the first one. I do think there's probably a 50-50 chance of like guessing what the next one is going to be. One of the things I'd say is if you were following the channel a couple of weeks ago and we were talking about Ederson and the sources coming out from Italy, they pretty much put Ederson and Tonali as the same kind of story. They said Ederson and Tonali, lots of agreements there, very close. The question mark's going to be, is there like a slither of hope they can get Eddie Anderson? Is that going to be stopping them going for Tonali, who's quite expensive? So that's probably going to be one of the angles with Tonali. As I said, I do have a Newcastle fan coming on the channel tonight. We will be talking about him. We'll talk about everything else that's Newcastle related as well. So if anyone wants to get involved in the comments and questions, I will say like big up to Lucky, Berber, Coyote, Yardi, Vril, and lots of legends in the chat this morning as well. So let me know what you're thinking. Doblekin as well, good to see you in the chat. So let me know what you're thinking. And quick question: would I take Harry Wilson on a free? Definitely. He's had a good season on a free. Absolutely, why not? Why not? I think he could offer something. So no, there's a lot of deals to be done. I think Manchester United's priority is going to be the long-term targets they've been looking at for a while. Ederson goes back probably a couple of years, so this is not a reactionary signing. The question is going to be now, where does Manchester United go? So the biggest stories I've seen this morning, there's a lot of say in the know accounts, so there's accounts that are posting implying that they know, and a lot of it's going towards MATEUS Fernandes. And this looks like if you're going to follow the stories and look at what's trending, this looks like the most obvious starting point. Like MATEUS Fernandes, very good player. There's a relegation factor there. West Ham need the money. It looks like it was a fight between Manchester United, Arsenal, Paris Saint-Germain, and Matheus Fernandes has pretty much said if he's going to stay in the Premier League, it's going to be Manchester United. It seems that Matheus Fernandes is given the green light, and it's like maybe Bruno Fernandes is a factor. But the story about Ederson as well is that 2 weeks ago, Ederson pretty much said, "I'm only joining Manchester United." So that's why that deal that it happened quite rapidly actually. And if you consider the factors in the deal with Ederson, is that Manchester United everything was pretty much agreed, and the only thing that changed was that Atalanta internally they had some elections. They got a new director of football, so that was just effectively changed it. It didn't really change anything. It just meant that the deal got delayed by what like 2 days. So in the end, things happened rapidly. We're talking about Man United doing a deal in June, the 2nd of June. So again, if we're looking at trying to do another deal before the World Cup, I think that would actually be quite significant. And it could be feasible as well. It could be that United can get this deal done if they go in with a sensible offer. I'm not sure exactly how close that. When you read the stories about Fernandez, the biggest thing that comes out is there seems to be a big difference in prices between how much do Man United think they can get this deal for, how much how much do West Ham honestly think they can get for a player that they're going to have to sell. They know they're going to have to sell. And at the moment, if he wants to join Manchester United, it probably doesn't give them a lot of options in terms of. I don't think they can. There's no bidding war here, and unless Paris Saint-Germain came in and put an offer on the table, which Matheus Fernandes found difficult to refuse, which is a slight possibility. I think this is definitely feels like a deal that Man United are like 90% with, and if we make an offer that's decent, it might be that West Ham then try and get a little bit more out of the deal, and maybe this is the sort of deal where United would be happy to maybe add a bit more money onto the add-ons and go, yeah, okay, well, we'll give you this much money up front. We know West Ham need the cash, and then the add-ons could then be maybe a bit of maybe a bit of bonus money for West Ham, depending on what Manchester United achieve this season, depending on what Matheus Fernandes achieves. So I think there could be a first offer going in, but I'd be surprised if West Ham accept the first offer unless it is actually a surprisingly high value. But they're not going to get 84 million. They're not going to get 80 million, are they? So it would be a negotiation process, I think, for sure. So I think this one might be. It might be that see an initial offer this week, but it might be that it takes a little bit longer because once the player agrees to join Man United and it's just between Manchester United and West Ham, then it doesn't really need to be rushed through. This is just a negotiation process. But to be honest, I think the numbers will meet somewhere in the middle, and I don't think it's going to be the biggest surprise ever, is it? So now this would be for me. I think it's the most likely one. I mean, what do people think? Like Lucky Singh says, move fast for the next one. Um, I think they already are lucky, to be honest. The only thing I could see as maybe a potential side story, and this is where Manchester United have had talks with Tyler Adams in January. You look at Alex Scott as well, and there's two players here where I think Manchester United's interest in Alex Scott seems to be credible. It does seem to be that Manchester United have spoken to Bournemouth, Alex Scott. They want to get an idea about the price, and I don't necessarily see them pivoting away from Matheus Fernandes, but you can't rule it out. Like Manchester United have walked away from Belieber, they walked away from Branthwaite when the price was a bit too high, and they went no, they walked away from Branthwaite and got Aiden Heaven, who was completely different in terms of like where he was in his career. So you look at this, Manchester United have recently walked away from deals they deemed too expensive. So that's probably actually a good thing. So the fact Man United did not offer crazy money for Belieber, the fact we didn't offer an extra 5 to 10 million to get Branthwaite, maybe it puts us in a slightly better negotiation position than we would have been, say, a few years ago. So if Man United are serious with this deal with Matheus Fernandes, maybe this Alex Scott is a little bit of a, come on, West Ham, look, we have got other options available. There's no indication that Paris Saint-Germain would pay more money than Manchester United. That Arsenal are interested, but they might also be looking to pay a bit less money than Manchester United. So I think it could be potentially a good strategy. We'll have to see, obviously, what happens regarding this one. Morning to you, Randy, as well. I hope you're having a good morning. Is it South Africa you're from, Randy? My geography is not amazing with like time difference. I'm guessing you're slightly ahead, but like time wise for UK 9 a.m. stream. And so looking at this one, you're saying so probably Matheus Fernandes money. Like how much is he going to go for? It feels a little bit like you just take the valuations, you go roughly in the middle. I'd be surprised if we saw. To be honest, I would be surprised if we saw up to 60. I'm looking at this deal thinking it could be like the initial bit, you say 55 plus 10. I think that's probably close, like really close. And I think the initial money, like say 55, that's why I'm thinking that might be 50, 55. I'd imagine Man United's first offer might be like something like 50 plus some add-ons. Like most of the deals we're doing now do include add-ons, and it's a way of actually, I suppose it's a way of removing a tiny bit of risk, but also meaning that Manchester United have been able to move parts of the transfer fee into the next financial window. Not really an issue going forward, but certainly something that has been a sensible move as well. So 55 plus 10, I think that should get the deal done. I think some people might think that's a bit pricey considering the player's age, just being relegated, but I think that would be yeah, I think that would be close. I'm sure that they would take 60 up front with any sort of add-ons. That for me would be yeah, a really good deal, considering that there's a lot of other players available. If Adam Wharton goes for, I know, 65, which was being rumoured, then I think you're looking at that as a benchmark. He's a player that's been playing at a higher level for a bit longer as well. So I think that would be for me are comparable in terms of like, it's difficult at this stage in the transfer window. So one of the things I'd say regarding prices and things is Ederson's been signed, and the initial reaction for me is that when people look at this, the first thing I saw about Ederson was people look at the money and say, is that a lot of money for the player on the last year of his contract? And at the moment, it might be it might be a decent amount of money. It might actually end up looking very cheap when other deals happen. So if MATEUS Fernandes maybe costs like £5 to £10 million more than we expect, and maybe Alex Scott, if he moves, which I think is going to be likely, if he costs a bit more, sometimes it could just be that the transfer window, when things start kicking off, sometimes players start going for bigger money. Just think Wissa, think Alanga, think Gittins. Like these are all, I would say, expensive deals for players that were, they weren't worth the money they went for. So you could suddenly see things, things definitely changing. So it might change a lot as well. I'd say we need number six as well. Cody says you think Scott deal is a double bluff. It could be. It could be. No, no, big up you, Randy. It could be that Scott is there as a. It's a bit like Hayden Hackney. It's a little bit like, say, Angela Stiller. There's a lot of players out there that Manchester United are looking at. I think they're just looking at a lot of players because until players actually sign and actually choose a club, you do not know where these players are going to go. So if Manchester United wanted to sign three midfielders, it stands to reason you've got to speak to it at least double that number and maybe three times that number because you don't know where these players are actually going to want to go. For every player we're looking at, Alex Scott, Matheus Fernandes, there will be other clubs looking at them as well. And it's just a bit like the Delap deal. You don't know where these players are actually going to want to go. Some of these players will definitely want to join Manchester United because you're going to get a lot of money. You're going to get a high-profile club. You've got a club in the Champions League. There's all these factors. You're going to get decent salary, and potentially Man United will be in a position where if they keep maintaining the Champions League status, then your next contract will be even bigger. So there's a lot of reasons why players choose Manchester United. But again, if Manchester City are the other team against us, or you've got PSG, you've got Real Madrid, these are the big teams that United have to be mindful that if Angela Stiller goes to Real Madrid and you look at Eddie Anderson maybe going to City, that there are some players that will be off the table, but you have to have those talks because they're still very good signings if you can get them over the line. But Cody's saying that PSG favour attacking roles according to reports. PSG were heavily linked to Greenwood. I was really hoping that deal would happen. I'm actually still hoping that PSG get involved as well because this is the Greenwood angle. Marseille are pushing for a high possible price. It looks a bit like this is kind of initial story. So I'll go into this a bit more maybe in the lunchtime stream if more develops. But Mason Greenwood is certainly going to be. It looks like he's moving clubs, and it looks like Roma might be the first club. I don't think they're going to be the last club there. I'd imagine we like Greenwood as well. Will Greenwood hold out for a different move? I can see him being the sort of player that will be definitely trying to move to a bigger and bigger club if he can do that. So will Roma be the end destination? Not really, but for Manchester United, the story will end with his next move. So our sell-on clause is significant, and it depends on a big move now. So I'm hoping that we do get a big move for him. I was hoping that we'd get, I don't know what it would be like. I was hoping Paris Saint-Germain came in, and I was hoping there would be a large offer because if that happened, then we could get a decent amount of money. So we could get about 20 million if we sold him for 25. If he goes for 50, we're getting half of the 25, which would be 12.5. But I think if he goes for like 60 to 70, you start looking at. I was estimating last year that maximum would be about 25 million. If we get like 15 to 20, it's still significant, and actually it would still be complete profit, wouldn't it? Because he's also came through the academy, so it would be quite a bit. It would be a nice windfall. It'd be £20 million in the accounts, and it would be a factor in looking at what we're trying to do as a club going forward as well. So Greenwood seems to be going to Fenerbahce. I'd be surprised if he goes to Turkey. Then I mean they can pay quite big salaries, but it would seem like a strange move. We've seen like Osman go to Galatasaray. It doesn't mean you're then going to bounce back into a top European league. So I don't know. I think he has to choose his deal. He has to choose his next move very, very carefully. I'd imagine going to Italy could be a nice boost in his numbers, and it might be it might be a good move for him. We'll have to see as well. Let's say Scott has been linked to Liverpool. You're not sure whether they'd want Scott and Wharton. It's probably exactly the same situation at Manchester United, isn't it? We're linked to Tonali, we're linked to MATEUS Fernandes, we're linked to Alex Scott, we're linked to. You can probably throw in like another five names, can't you? Like whether it's going to be a Gume or it's going to be Angela Stiller or it's going to be too many Anderson, etc. We're linked to all these players as well, Jim, aren't we? And Liverpool will have their eye on one or two players. I think Wharton seems to be the player that's regularly linked to Liverpool, and Wharton seems to be the player that wants to join Liverpool. Alex Scott, I have no idea actually. I think he's going to leave, but I can't really guess where Alex Scott's going to go. Like linked to Liverpool, but I think they go for Wharton. Linked to Manchester United, but I think we go for Matheus Fernandes. I think he's a really good player, and he's not really linked to Man City, but Man City might be looking at Anderson or other players, and I think Arsenal might be looking at Tonali. So Alex Scott's one of those players where potentially, maybe he actually consider staying at Bournemouth. So that there's you got that on the table as well. So it could be that that happens, but there's a lot of flux. It's not just Manchester United that are linked to loads of players at the gym. There's just like it's just what it's that kind of that's part of the season where, to be honest, if we fast forward like a week, I'd imagine that Ederson's off the table now. Maybe Matheus Fernandes is off the table. Maybe Wharton's gone. Maybe we get some clarification over like Rodri if he's going to stay at Man City. So things will kind of fall into place. But at the moment, it feels like there's like a lot of things up in the air and a lot of variables. I kind of like, I sort of like this as part of the transfer window because it's you don't know how it's going to go. And I've got a bit more confidence in Manchester United than previous years that I think we might get good deals done. So there is a bit of no, I think at the moment a bit of optimism for myself, but we'll have to see how a lot of this pans out as well. Big up to you, Neil. One thing I have got is a poll in the chat where it's like just predict, just guess like who you think is going to be the next signing for Manchester United. If you think it's going to be none of those three, and Man United are going to, I don't know, surprise us with a deal. I'm at the moment, the media seems to be actually really on it. So if you're looking at the stories, all the stories that came out of Italy have been, very reliable, very credible sources, and you've got to say Italian media has been, spot on with Ederson, and they were heavily talking about Tonali. It might be that Man United have changed their ideas in like the last week, and a lot of this might come down to the price of Tonali. I think that's probably the factor. I do think that Man United would be happy to get Tonali depending on the price, and it could possibly be that they have this. How Man United used to overpay, and everybody still thinks that there's going to be this Man United tax on any signing. I don't think it necessarily is a Man United tax, and I think Manchester United do look at every single player with like a maximum price in mind, and it could be with Matheus Fernandes. Maybe the maximum price is like 55 to 60. I think 60 for me would feel like if you go beyond that, then there's a lot of options available. So I think there's like a minimum price with I don't think you can go less than 50 to get Fernandes. I don't think Man United would be looking to try and go if we went over 60, at least 10 of those have got to be add-ons. So I don't think I think there's definitely I'll be put it this way, I'll be very surprised if there's a deal over 65 and I'll be very surprised if there's a deal under 50. It feels a bit like there's a sweet spot where this gets negotiated. And I think that it'll be like 60, 65 total. It's just going to be a factor of how much of that is upfront, how much of that's add-ons, and it might come down to payment structure, how much do West Ham need in the short term, and maybe Man United are looking at like which financial year we're trying to do this deal in as well could be a factor. I think United's financial situation is a lot more stable, and I think West Ham's situation might be a bit more precarious given the relegation, given like they got outstanding transfer debt as well. West Ham have spent quite big, so West Ham do have to, balance the books as well in line with like being in the championship. And it might mean that, West Ham might think, okay, as long as they get a decent price, I think they'll be happy with that one as well. Big up to you, Clive. Hope you're doing well, my friend. I'm all good. I mean, it feels like the channel's starting to get a bit of momentum now that deals are starting to happen, and a lot of things that we've worked on, and as a club and as a community, we can see happening coming to fruition. So we can see that most of the stories that have been talked about by maybe some of the original kind of sources where you look at what's happening in Italy and you look at those journalists that are very good journalists. They've been posting accurate information. I think this time Man United have not really been leaking information to the press. So yeah, there's like a few things. This one, who has more chance of being a better tackler? So, um, I don't know, to be honest. I think they're both. I find it very difficult to predict or compare people that are 21, 22 when there's a lot of differences between what Alex Scott does at Bournemouth and what Cole Mainey's doing at Manchester United. Mainey's only been in the team since January, so I think it's very difficult to yeah. So heaven is 10 times better than bran flakes. No, I would say like serious note aside though, I think Branthwaite's got. I think he might have done his hamstring, so it shows that Man United did better in out of that deal. So we could have spent bigger on Branthwaite. I think a lot of people wanted Branthwaite at the time. They've gone for like a very low risk option. I think it is a sensible move, like really sensible move. Um, no, you do make a good point actually. It's kind of difficult actually, Brill, sometimes to differentiate between what's considered a good move and what's considered a move where players might not be happy. There is definitely, I think, with this one of the things I'd say is, you know how the status of leagues changes, and football is always in flux. Like the Premier League's got the money at the moment, but in 10 years' time, who knows? It could be different. And like Serie A used to be the best league. I think at one point you'd look at La Liga as being maybe like a Premier League as well, where you look at teams in the Europa League, but were being the Europa League was being dominated by Spanish teams, and Real Madrid were lifting like Champions League after Champions League, and we're seeing a bit of a shift now. You got PSG as like the surprise team that has been dominating Europe the last couple of seasons, but you're seeing like the Turkish league, they've got a lot of financial power at the top of their league. So okay, once you go beyond the top four teams, it drops off a lot. But the top teams in Turkey, they've got loads of Champions League money because Galatasaray, Fenerbahce, these teams are in the Champions League every single season, and that's a huge amount of money. If you compare the budgets of clubs around the world now, the Champions League qualifying for the Champions League every year, Man United lost out on about 100 million by missing out on Champions League. So you imagine that sort of cash influx in teams like Galatasaray, Fenerbahce, but they do offer big salaries. So it's kind of got to a situation in Turkey where you've got, I think it's like, I would say it's probably four teams that are levels above the rest of the league. And it's probably not going to change because those teams are in the Champions League every single season, getting more and more money. You could argue that maybe Europa League participation for some Turkish teams is going to be help them bridge the gap. But now for some teams in Turkey, they do have a lot of money, and I think that's a fair point, Vril. That I was kind of thinking like, if you're Mason Greenwood, where do you want to play? Maybe maybe Fenerbahce, maybe Galatasaray, you got to look at those clubs and say, maybe they're going to be uh, offered able to do that. So, potentially, maybe we see something with some of the Greek teams as well. That the Champions League money is going to change football. It's probably going to make it more difficult for a lot of teams to actually bridge the gap. If you're not one of the biggest teams in your domestic league, you're probably going to struggle. If you're a mid-table Turkish team, you've probably got no chance, given like how the financial situation is going to be so unbalanced in that league. But now, maybe Greenwood does go there. I mean, I was surprised Victor Osman went there when he was supposed to go to Chelsea, and then Victor Osman stayed. So, we've seen it happen, and maybe it's going to happen a bit more. So, things do change in football. Like what's deemed a really good league to play does change over like season after season. I'd even say like people are quite negative about Serie A, but for Serie A, it does also represent a lot of history for some football players. There's still some very big clubs there. There's still some quality in terms of individual players in some of the top clubs. But as a league, they're just not doing very well in Europe at the moment. But things can change. Like Serie A still attracts decent players. But if you're looking at trying to compete financially. At the moment, Turkey can offer bigger salaries than some of the top Italian teams, which feels a bit of a strange thing to say, but it's helped by the tax situation a little bit. But also, you've got like say a few teams in Turkey that are regularly in the Champions League. So if you're not in the Champions League in Serie A, you're going to be at a financial disadvantage to some of these teams. So it just shows how football does change. Nothing stays the same. So in a minute, So we've been like live for 25 minutes. I'll be interested to see what the poll's looking at the moment. My guess is going to be I did say I'd say what I think kind of halfway through. So my guess would be that Man United's next move is Matheus Fernandes, and that's why I've got his image on the screen. I think I'm not sure if Man United are going to try and sign Tonali. I think the least likely of those signings would be Alex Scott. I have actually said no. If Man United got say we got Ederson done. If we got Alex Scott and we got Matheus Fernandes, then I wouldn't be too negative either. I think that this is still a big upgrade in terms of like what we've got in depth, and I think we've also got two young players in Alex Scott and Matheus Fernandes that, and actually Kobe Mainoo as well. Kobe Mainoo is still a young player that's going to develop. So I think we would have it maybe wouldn't have the same impact in year one because we've got three signings that are all like 21, 22. So having three young midfielders like that would represent a bit of a kind of like, they're going to be better in 2 or 3 years' time. But for me, it would be quite exciting as a Man United fan because we would have that expectation that the team naturally is going to improve because it's quite a young team. So I quite like the idea of a young, dynamic team. But I do think there's something to be said about getting a player slightly older with a bit more experience. Like Anderson's got a bit more experience. I think someone like Tonali, like someone like Too Many is like the kind of gold standard. I think for experience and what he could bring. But I think I wouldn't be too disappointed because that would maybe financially it would mean that United can go for someone like Lewis Hall and maybe can go for. I saw Evan Nielsen mentioned, and I think other people talking about striking backups as well. I think there's definitely some options on the table that will be addressed by Man United depending on what happens. If you get midfield done, no, it's June, isn't it? 3rd of June. If we got another midfield player in, then I think we could actually maybe wait a little bit for the third midfield signing, and maybe we do go for a left back. Maybe we do actually go for a left winger, and maybe we see like Man United's transfer window open up a little bit. So it could change in like a way we're not really expecting. Good morning to you, Rob, as well. Hope you're good. And so, morning all. If we get to Tonali, it will be at the end of the window, says Mark. So it might well be Mark. It might well be. So I'm hoping that we get some sort of information on Tonali today because at 8 p.m. tonight I've got a Newcastle fan coming on, and I'm hoping to ask him a few questions regarding um, how much is Newcastle going to cost. Um, is there any chance? Is it going to be affected by the Gordon deal? I think the Gordon deal brings money into Newcastle. Does that mean that Tonali will not be reduced in price? I think there's definitely a factor there that might be true. Does it mean that like is there going to be other teams interested in Tonali? Like I think with this one, I get the feeling that Tonali's going to leave the club. Like he wanted to leave in January. I don't think Newcastle can keep a player that's unhappy at the club. Like for me, that's not good. That's not good football sense or business sense at all. There's going to be a certain cap on how much player teams are prepared to pay for Tonali. I mean, the fact that Tonali is like he hasn't forced his way out of the club yet, but his agent is working on it and has been talking about it since January. I think with Tonali, 100 million feels like a lot for a player that's kind of determined to leave the football club. So I don't know how he's under contract for sure. So obviously there's a bit of power with the club, but I think history tells us that when a player wants to leave, you've got to get this deal done and you've got to try and get it done amicably and sensibly because any sort of massive fallout is not going to look good for Tonali. It's going to put maybe off prospective teams, but also it's going to be bad for Newcastle dropping the price. If I was Newcastle, I would be looking to do the deal sooner rather than later. Like I know yeah, that it says that Newcastle's not going to drop the price. I think Newcastle has to be realistic here. Worst case scenario for Newcastle would be Tonali stays at the club. And I think if Tonali stays at the club, he's not going to be happy. It wouldn't, for me, I can only imagine that is he going to be able to put in the best performance when he's like, he's pretty much said he wants to leave since January. The club know he wants to leave. I think that Newcastle need to engineer him leaving for a sensible price. Like, I think 100 million is too much. And if they're not going to drop the price, maybe he stays at the club. I just don't see how, I just don't see how that's going to happen. Um, So, have you got a source for that, Andy? Because Yali was in the comments last night when we were doing a stream very late last night, and I heard that mentioned that maybe maybe City are going to walk away from Anderson. I think the valuation from Nottingham Forest is just too high. Like, what's it, 120 million that they're deemed to be asking? I think it's just too high. And I think that Man United are definitely not going to pay 125 million. Manchester City, then I don't know how much money they're thinking. I saw a story about a week ago that Man City might test the water with a bid of about 95. So I don't know if Forest think they can get more, then good luck to them. If you buy a football player for 35 million and you want over 100 million 2 years later, I think whatever happens, if you get 90, you've done amazingly well. There's like massive profit in there already. So and I don't see if you look at prices in football. If Anderson is deemed to be worth 100 million this season, I just don't see that price going up. Like, no, the thing is, Anderson is quite young. If you fast forward like a year or two, people start looking at lowering the price. Even if Anderson improves as a football player, people just don't want to spend a lot of money on a player that's mid 20s. So the fact that he's still at an age where you can get a big transfer fee, I think Forest have to be careful. That I would say, what happens if Anderson gets some sort of injury? Like there is maybe there's like a 20% chance of him getting some sort of injury in the next 1 or 2 years. If you keep a player that's worth that amount of money, yeah, you have to build around him, or you have to sell him for profit. So I think there's two teams here: Newcastle, Nottingham Forest. They're both like being a bit risky, I think, in terms of like, if you keep these players, you might keep them, and then Nottingham Forest might have a good idea of what they can spend 120 million pounds on, but I don't think they're going to get that sort of money. I'd imagine. I think Man United might be prepared to go close to 100 million. Like they might be prepared to go that high, but 125 is for me, crazy money. But there's options out there that I think would be more effective as well. So. The Anderson deal is at the stalemate stage of who will blink first. The thing is, though, there's deals to do, isn't it? Man United can get other deals done, and it's going to be difficult. Mark says, I really want to know who the marquee signing will be. Maybe Man United shouldn't have put out a statement like that because when you say we're going to get a marquee signing, the first reaction is going to be everybody was going to have a different idea about what signing qualifies as a marquee signing. For me, like too many's a marquee signing, ticks every single box. He's a top quality player for his country, top quality player in the Champions League for years. So he's a marquee signing. I think to put Anderson in the same bracket is I don't know. I don't think Anderson is the same. Like it doesn't have the same pedigree as too many and what he's achieved in football. Like with Anderson, there's definitely a case of what's his next level? Like what can he do next season? What can he do in a bigger club? Like Eddie Anderson hasn't played for like with the pressure. I know he's at Newcastle, but his main kind of body of work, you've got to look at Forest. Forest have never been, in a title race. Forest haven't been in the Champions League. So you look at like when he steps up in those competitions, like I don't think you compare Anderson to too many at the moment in terms of marquee signing. I think he's very good, and I did say that for me he'd be my like priority signing, but I think at the moment it's pretty tricky, isn't it? Who doesn't fit the age range? Randy's saying we've already got Ederson. Are you okay? You think Tonali? Um, yeah, Tonali is probably very slightly. How old Sonali is that tonight? 26. I think it's like borderline. Edison. If you're looking at Matheus Cunha and Mbeumo, I think when you get players that are going to be, and I think Edison's a bit closer to 27, but he signed a 4-year contract, so that's going to take him up to 31. I think if Manchester United are signing players at the moment, we're probably looking at if we get a player in that's going to be, I think the difference is going to be marginal maybe. So if you get a player that's 25, you give them a 5-year plus one, it takes them up to 31. If you're getting a player that's 27, he's got a 4-year deal, takes him up to the same age as 31. So I think if you get a player that's slightly younger, he might get a slightly bigger contract and in terms of like length. So I think it's not going to make a massive difference. I think Tonali would still be there for, you still get 5 years out of Tonali, which is quite a long time in football. If you consider like an average players like kind of lifespan in the Premier League is maybe like what 7 or 8 years, I think as a average. So I think Tonali would still be an effective deal. I think it just might be that Tonali might be a bit expensive as well. Yeah, I do think. but a lot of people saying that when it came to, maybe I should have put too many in the poll. You could have voted on whether too many, but too many counts as like other in that deal as well. But say too many replaced Casemiro at Real Madrid, should replace Casemiro at United. I think the main thing about this one, why I don't really talk about it, is too many wants to stay at Real Madrid. I don't think Real Madrid want to sell him either. So I just don't see what how there's any. I just don't see there's any legs in this story. I can't see how too many leaves Real Madrid. But and that's just until something significantly changes. I mean, even the story with like Valverde and the fight or the disagreement, etc. Then I still see no energy from Real Madrid to like force too many out. I don't think Mourinho loves like a defensive midfielder, doesn't he? And Mourinho's going to love too many. So I don't see how I don't see how he's not a part of Real Madrid. If he is, then come back to the stream and say I told you so because it's here. I'm being recorded saying it. I just don't think too many deals going to be happening as well. Yeah, Ederson is there about energy, etc. So I just read you the quote from some Italian media about what they said about Ederson because Ederson last night we're talking about it very late, and there's definitely a mixed reaction to Ederson. Like most people are happy with the deal because they see it for what it is. It's the first deal. It's going to bring like a bit of no. It gets one deal over the line and it gets the ball rolling. Ederson's in. Now we go for like the next deal. I think the next deal is MATEUS Fernandes, but you never know. Things could change. And this might be a reason why people are saying get Joe Gomez. I think Man United always had an idea that Ederson's been talked about for maybe like 18 months. Unlike Red Devil United, we talked about it loads, and we talked about it quite a bit recently as well. But it was we thought it was a done deal about I think 10 days ago, or maybe like close to 2 weeks ago, and the Italian sources were 100% accurate. They did say pretty much at the same time Tonali was done, but yeah, we'll have to see if that pans out. But speaking about this, Matteo Goretti, who's the ITV commentator and lead analyst in the USA as well, or say TV commentator. And he said on Anderson that he's enjoyed watching with Atalanta, and actually Jules, who's like a host on this channel as well, he really likes Ederson. I think people that watched him must think that people are going to, they think Man United fans are going to love him. So it's going to be his work rate, his work ethics as well, and he's going to have some quality on the ball. So I think he's going to be maybe like a traditional box to box midfielder. Imagine Fred, but hopefully works out a bit better, and hopefully our team structure is a bit better than it was a couple of years ago. I think it's a good signing, and I'm quite positive about that one. But again, if we paid like £60 million, I wouldn't be positive. But the fact we paid, I think it's like going to be high 30s, and the salary is going to be expected to be not that high. So I think overall it's a good deal for me. Um, Morning to you, Genghis. Good to see you in the chat, my friend. So, what I might do is I might look at the poll. If you want to vote in the poll, please do so. If you're able to share the stream, then please share the stream as well. That will massively help the channel. And I don't know how many likes are on the video, but please click the like as well if you haven't done so. And, and also, most importantly, on this channel, if you're a football fan of any club and you want to get involved in the chat, please post some comments because I do read out. I try and read out as many comments as possible. It's not, just bear in mind that sometimes it's not always possible to read out everyone's comments because there's just quite a lot of them at the same time. So it depends what we're talking about at the time. And if the comments are relevant, I'll try and get as many read out as possible. Moretto spoke on the Tonali, so we'll see how it goes. Exactly, Moretto was like spot on with everything he said about Ederson was proved to be accurate. And I think with the Tonali deal, I think what they said about Tonali was Manchester United had agreed terms with players. The players were on board. I think Tonali would be certainly up for joining Manchester United. The only thing that's happened is Manchester United were able to progress quite rapidly with Atalanta because the price was deemed to be acceptable and the pay structure presumably is acceptable and the personal terms with Ederson were not particularly expensive. I think Tonali will want more money, 100%, but I don't think it's going to be excessive, and I think it'll still fit into our wage structure. The thing holding this deal up is going to be how much money do Newcastle want? And Newcastle have had like a cash injection from the Gordon deal. It could be that Man United, if I was Man United, I'd be seriously looking at Lewis Hall and thinking, right, we're going to get one deal done with Newcastle. Tonali is a good option, but there's a lot of other midfield options. Lewis Hall's a very good option, and for me, there's not quite as many left back options out there. So, and I think maybe Lewis Hall might be a good fit for Manchester United. Like you got Luke Shaw still. I think that deal for me is definitely an interesting one, and it would address that. No, if we can make a left back position where we've got a very good first option and a very credible backup option, that's a much better position than we've been in for when like a year ago we had no left back, and also we still got younger left backs like Leon and Amas that potentially come through in the future. So we got quite a good situation for that. So we have to see if that pans out. So I'm going to jump into the comment section in a second, see what the vote's on. But if you're able to vote, then please do so. Because like, what do you think is the next deal? I've been like, I don't want to be pushing Matheus Fernandes, but it looks like if you're going to guess, if you're going to put some money on it, you'd probably go that way. I think it might be an obvious kind of one as well. So at the moment, Fernandes 55%. So welcome, Member Flossie. So 8 p.m. should be the time. I just need to confirm it with Philip that he's good for that. But I think 8 p.m. will be when we ask any question Newcastle related. We'll get that on board. I think with Newcastle, obviously with Manchester United, we've got a different situation. We're looking at lots of midfielders, and I think Newcastle as well. They're probably they could this could be a very busy transfer window for Newcastle. If you're going to sell these players, then there's going to be significant money coming in. But you've also got to look at that. Is that one of the questions I might have for Philip is would Newcastle do something similar to what Manchester United did a year ago, where more players left than came in? We know kind of deliberately or just because our owners are not the most proactive, we ended up with a reduced squad in terms of like numbers, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been because we didn't have Champions League. So missing out on European football for Newcastle, does that mean that if they sell Lewis Hall, they sell Tonali, that I'm not saying all these players get sold, but just hypothetically, if they did sell quite a few players, would it then reduce the urgency to replace all these players? Like, would they be able to maybe be a bit more selective in the transfer window and actually go like, "Look, we don't need to replace all the players that have left because we've got reduced games." I think it's a bit risky, but it could potentially. If I was Newcastle, I'd be looking at ways to try and make it as that. Yeah, the idea's got to be get back to the Champions League or get back up the table as much as possible. So if these players leave, a lot of money's going to come in, but I think you need to try and get some good deals lined up, like ready, that are not going to be expensive. I didn't think Worcester was a great deal for you guys, and yeah, I think that you have to try and get the right players for a decent amount of money. That because there is going to be a lot of money coming into Newcastle, like for sure. Um, so Hall would be a perfect signing, exactly. I'll just say for me, Hall would be a great signing, but I appreciate that he's going to be quite expensive. Like it's not going to be cheap. But again, you're not going to get very good players cheap. I think there's a market value for Lewis Hall, and for me, like when you're looking at Lewis Hall, I'm not looking at stats. People I know that have gone to games and watched him, just like Jules for me is a good indicator, a good barometer for watching live football. I think there's just yeah, he for me, it's like he's not perfect. I say as in like he's not a perfect left back at the moment, but he's got a lot of attributes which I think would suit Manchester United, and I think he can work on his weaknesses. And again, it's that for me. If you're looking at, I suppose you've got Trafford, you've got Kadioglu, you've got Lewis Hall, you've got who else were we considering? You got Juve at West Ham. I think Lewis Hall would be for me. I don't know, my top option at the moment. I do really like Kadioglu. But I think I don't know. There's something about Lewis Hall I think would be a good signing for Man United, but he would be very expensive. And to be honest, he's probably the most expensive player of those ones I've listed. But it's going to be a difficult deal to do. I don't think there's any way we can get Tonali and Lewis Hall. I think it's just it's going to be so much money. And I think if I was Newcastle, I think once you've got Gordon sold, this is kind of a guess as well. I don't think there's any. I don't think Newcastle need to sell players, so they're just going to demand a high transfer fee. Why wouldn't you? Like it's a bit different with West Ham. Like, West Ham do need the money. They've been relegated. They've apparently got some outstanding debts they need to settle relatively quickly. And from that point of view, I think the Matheus Fernandes deal gets done rapidly. But it's very it's difficult to predict, isn't it? Like what's best for Newcastle is obviously not what's best for Man United. So this deal for me, any sort of deal with Tonali or Lewis Hall, feels like it would not be that rapid. So that's what I'm thinking as well. Big up to you, Nems. Good to see you in the chat, friend. Hope you're doing well. And welcome, Cake, as well. Good to see you, Cake, in the chat. No, there's definitely going to be. I think for this one, I've not had Philip on the channel for quite a while, and I've not had a rival fan on the channel for a bit of time. So I think during the transfer window, if I can get people involved, the difficulty is that you've got to kind of like organise things ahead of schedule, and the news kind of changes quite rapidly. But I think with Newcastle, there's so much things with like the Gordon and the Rashford situation, the Lewis Hall situation, the Tonali with Matheus Fernandes. There's so much going on. I think there's a lot of different things we can talk about. And Philip is very knowledgeable about other things as well. So I think any subject will be on the table for sure. You think Trippier's retired as well? So no, I think there's a lot of things happening, isn't there? Like I think a lot of clubs sometimes there's a perception that clubs on the up, and there's sometimes where there's a bit of a rebuild. I think, to be honest, I don't know as much of Newcastle as like people like Mama Floss is going to have a lot more knowledge on Newcastle than myself, and I think a lot of us with Newcastle stories just have to kind of take it with a pinch of salt. Some of the mainstream media, we don't know 100% what's going on. I think they've done well in getting a good price for Gordon, but Gordon wanted to leave, and fair play to Newcastle, they got good money for him quite early. So maybe they're looking at doing their deals quite early in this time. Say Anana's coming back to fight for his pay rise. Look, I don't know. I don't know. Do you know with Anana that I mean, you don't have to be a goalkeeping expert to know that Anana's got no place in the Premier League. But no, one of the things I'd say, I did a call-in show last Sunday. If you watched any of the call-in show, one of the guests near the end, JR, he's been like a semi-professional goalkeeper himself. So I've heard nothing but yeah, people just like this is not going to happen, is it? Anana's not going to come back. He's going to get loaned out somewhere else. He's not going to feature. But no, it's one of those things, isn't it? Ederson has got 30,000 new followers overnight. Guess that will increase quickly. We need to get Ederson on the channel. get some of those subscribers. Um, no, this is one of these things as well that Matheus Fernandes, if he joins Manchester United, the same thing's going to happen to him. It's difficult to quantify because it's the same as like Man United are not unique. This will be any player that's gone from a smaller club to a bigger club. You're going to get this level of attention. I think Manchester United, Arsenal, Liverpool, in terms of social media, they're absolutely massive. Real Madrid's obviously massive. I think that's probably going to be a positive thing, but it's going to be one of the things that I think will maybe surprise some people that are not Premier League fans is that if you're looking at the size of the club, that I think Sesko found it, and I think there's a few other players that found it. I think Zlatan talked about it. When you join a club like Man United, or maybe like even Liverpool, you've got a lot of history there. You've got a very passionate fan base. It's just different. It's just a different thing, and you get, it's not unique to Manchester United, but you do get players that join from big clubs. They join Manchester United, and then after that, you quite often see them talking about United, and you do see that with Liverpool as well. That they join Liverpool. Again, it's a similar club in terms of like lots of history, lots of success, passionate fan base, genuine proper fans going back, decades and decades of like generations of fans watching. So it could be like Ederson. It's like welcome to Manchester. This is what's happening. The club is going to be so massive as well. Um, where does Onana get his confidence from? I don't know. Do you remember Nicholas Bentner? Super confident, but not great. So confidence doesn't match ability, does it? Like you can be confident and be not great at your job. So they are not linked, are they? So, but you can also see. I think it's less likely to be really nervous and unconfident and excel in professional sports. But there are a lot of people. I think if you're going to assess confidence, they're probably somewhere in the middle, and I don't think it matters too much. To be honest, yeah. Saying you saw scouting reports from Onana saying he was badly flawed, palms born to danger area, etc. What were United thinking? I I get the feeling this. I don't know for sure, but I think this was definitely possibly a bit of manager interference with that one. From what saw and what I've read, the goalkeeping scouts were not keen on him, Genghis. So this time we've listened to the scouts and we've gone with the right decision with Lamans. But the information was there. We just made a bad decision. That's all I'd say. Ederson was identified by Carrick and Jason Wilcox as a replacement for Casemiro back in April, says Jamie Jackson. Um, I I would say with this one, I don't know, Yarly. Then it depends how good of a source you consider Jamie Jackson to be. I mean, Jamie Jackson, is he a Blackburn Rovers fan? I know he's not a Man United fan, but Jamie Jackson's like a credible journalist. I'm not going to say he's not, but I don't know if he's going to know that. I don't think Manchester United are looking for a Casemiro replacement. So when we're looking at rebuilding midfield, I don't think we're going to go. We're going to play if we're going to get a Casemiro replacement, it implies we're going to play the same way we played this season, and I don't think that's the case. I think Man United we played that way last season because we had Casemiro and because of the players we had. I think when you take Casemiro and Ugarte out of the squad and you drop Ederson, you drop MATEUS Fernandes, then I mean to say he's a replacement for Casemiro, I just don't think the players are that similar. That if you look at Casemiro, he's very good on the ball, composed, great in the air, but Ederson is just like a different level in speed and physicality, but he's not going to have the same levels in possession. He's not going to have the same range of passing as Casemiro. So I think there's difference. I think they're quite, in my view anyway, I think they're quite different players. So I don't think he's a replacement, but yeah, it depends how you're phrasing it. I think Man United are replacing Casemiro and Ugarte with new players, and then say closest. I think too many would might be like one of the closer ones, but say Edison's good on the ball. Maybe the range of passing. Maybe he's got the range of passing. We'll have to see. If he does have the range of passing, then I think that's great. I just think it's gonna. Okay, this is just my opinion. I'm not sure that Edison and Casemiro are 100% like that. I don't think there's as many similarities as there are differences. I think there's some things that they can do. Like yeah, in terms of passing range, I think Edison's good and Casemiro is very good in terms of like how many duels is Ederson going to put in? Loads more than Casemiro. I think it means Man United can play slightly more open. Ederson can get further forward than Casemiro and then recover and get back into position. I think Ederson can put more of a shift in off the ball than Casemiro can. So maybe we can press a bit more effectively as a team. But there will be drop offs. Like Casemiro is going to have, for me, a better skill set and other things as well. So I think we can change the way we play with Ederson. I think it's a slightly different profile, but yeah, we're going to have to see, aren't we? It's very difficult to see how we play. And Kate says, I hope we change the way we play next season. So if we're still in a low block counter attack mode, it might be honestly, it might be that sometimes we play in that mode, and then sometimes we don't play in that mode. Cake. I think that for me, the transfer window is about giving Michael Carrick options. And if in some matches the best idea is to be a counter attacking team, I don't mind. If Man United go right in this game, let's counter attack. The way would be, if a counter attacking setup is the way that Man United beat PSG in the Champions League, or it's the way that Manchester United can beat Arsenal, then that's fine. But yeah, I do agree with you that you don't want to play that style of football every single match. You need to have multiple ways of playing. Like the way we play against Arsenal and PSG will not be the way we play against Brighton or any mid-table club or like Coventry City. We've got to play in that way. We're going to play more possession based. We're going to be more. Hopefully, we're going to be playing a completely different way. But it gives us options, doesn't it? A lot of options. So lots of things. Yeah, there is going to be a difference, isn't there? They're not the same player. Edison's a lot younger, so there's a lot of factors in play. Now, big up to you, Cake. Thank you for supporting the channel. And fair play. You were in the midnight stream last night, the 9 a.m. this morning. So massive thanks to you, Cake. And I'll see you at 1 p.m. maybe if you're around at that point in time. So I think Edison's going to be. I think Edison's got. You know when you look at it and say, right, who's going to win the ball back most? will it be Casemiro? Will it be Ederson? And I think it would be in individual duels, Casemiro will be more effective. But I think a bit like someone like Anderson, who Anderson doesn't have the best dual win percentage, but he just keeps making challenge after challenge, and that puts the numbers up in terms of getting the ball back. I think Ederson will be an action player as well. I think he'll just keep at the opposition. It'll help us win the ball back quicker. It'll make it more difficult to play through. Yeah, this is what I'm thinking. I think Manchester United play differently, and it might be why some of the signings we're looking at, they won't necessarily make sense if we compare them with what we did last season. But it might make more sense after we see sort of like 4 or 5 games in the Premier League next season. Maybe with some pre-season, we might get a bit of information from pre-season about how the team plays. I think it will be different, and I think this time pre-season for me will be very interesting because I think the signings we're going to bring in, we've still got Sesko and Bremo Cunha. I think we're constructing an exciting team as well. So I'd say I think Cake wants both. Cake wants his cake and he wants to eat his cake and he wants to have attractive football while winning. I think with Manchester United, I'm a bit more I want to see good football, but I want to see victory, success. I want to see progression. So I want Manchester United to do whatever it takes to win. Obviously, I don't want to see Arsenal type football, but I think Man United would never play that sort of football anyway. With Bruno Fernandes in the team, we're always going to be quite aggressive on the attack. So I think United will play. We're going to play quite fast, high tempo, and I think it will be a bit open. Like it will probably still concede more goals than we want to, but that's kind of how Man United have always played. So I think we will see more attacking football, but our defenses. I don't think our defense will ever be as good as Arsenal's defense, but I think our attack can end up being better than Arsenal's attack. So I think we're a different team, but hopefully we're going to play to our strengths and hopefully we're going to get the best out of it. So for people that are watching, I did do a poll, and the question I asked was, "What's our next signing going to be?" And so I forgot to read out the result, but Alex Scott got 16%, Tonali got 16%, which is pretty low. Matheus Fernandes, there's a lot of stories about Matheus Fernandes at the moment, 55%, and other, which I suppose could be too many. Actually, I'm thinking if next signing though, it's difficult to imagine a next signing being anyone else. Maybe if there is Man United looking at potentially, there could be another signing that's going to be off the radar, like a cheap signing, or there's going to be potentially. We're looking at a couple of players from Leicester City as well, that are quite young. So there is potential for deals we're not aware of. You never know. Um, Saying you want to win the league no matter how we play. Yeah, obviously I want to win the league as well. I don't see a league win on the horizon next season, but you never know. You never know. And so, can we skip the World Cup and go straight into pre-season? The World Cup is going to be so big, isn't it? I didn't realize how many games there are with all those teams, and we're going to be doing watch-alongs for these games. So I didn't realize the crazy demand on that is going to be on the channel. So there's so much football going to be happening in the World Cup. Um, I know. I think we can actually cover every single game for watch-along. So if anyone has trouble sleeping in the middle of the night, then I think G Wolf will be running the crazy late night streams. Actually, he's quite up for doing every match. So I don't want to burn him out though. I think we need some squad rotation for like guests and hosts on the channel as well. But I think for this one, then Cake's at work, so he can't speak for himself. So I think Cake wants to see better quality football and Man United winning. So yeah. So FIFA have ruined the World Cup for me. This is one where I'm going to be open-minded and say I don't know what to expect from the World Cup. I hope it's not going to be. Do you remember when the Champions League used to be two group stages? It got so long, so convoluted, and it just for me it did spoil the competition a bit as well. So I hope you're wrong, and I'm looking forward to the World Cup, but I hope it's not going to be one of those competitions where it feels like there's way too many games. I'm just wondering whether the group stage is usually crazy because there's so many games. I'm just wondering if we start seeing loads of like high scores and loads of non-competitive matches, it won't look great. It might be quite fun for some people watching because you might see some of the best players playing those games and look amazing because the games are quite easy. But I don't know. I kind of think that FIFA money is kind of spoiling football, and it's maybe because there's too much quantity of football. So I know a few people that I speak to in spaces recently that were very worried about the quality of some of the pitches. I hope there's no injuries and issues like that, because that for me would be a disappointing thing. Absolutely for sure. But yeah, it could be that it also seems like it's taken away from the fans. Like, the prices are insane. I know a few people that there was someone from Canada I spoke to, and they were paying about 1,500 for one game. I mean, it's just for me. I don't know what's going to happen. I think there'll be a lot of grounds where there's not going to be any much demand for tickets, and then they're going to have to slash the prices with like 24 hours to go. So I don't like this the pricing strategy. I don't like the fact that the pitches might not be particularly great considering the level of football. So I don't know. From what happened, the World Cup in 1994, apparently the quality of pitches was way better than what we might get this World Cup. So I hope that's not the case. But I'm going to be open-minded and hope. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm hoping for some shocks. There could be some shocks as well. So yeah, we'll have to see. We'll have to see. For people that want to be kept in up to date, and people, if you want to communicate with other people in the community, then I'll put a link to the Discord. This is probably yeah, depending on what social media platforms you're on, the Discord is a good way to keep in contact with people in the community. And if you want to message myself, well, I'm on the Discord as well, so you can send messages. But the link to Discord is in the chat there. So if you want to get involved in the community behind the scenes, that's the Discord link. And I will be live at 1 p.m. this afternoon, and we'll be covering any sort of breaking news, depending on what's happening as well. So thanks for supporting the channel. If you're new and you watch but never subscribe, everything's free on the channel. And subscribing just helps, because once we can get to 1K, it will help with YouTube pushing the content out a bit more and will help growing the channel. So thank you for your support, and we'll be live in a few hours' time. So then, guys, have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you at 1 p.m.